So what kind of impact do these tour operators have on local economies? Mark Ellwood is the contributing editor with Conde Nast Traveler, and he joins us now to talk about this. Welcome. It's nice to have you here, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with Thomas Cook and then broaden it out to the industry overall. What kind of impact is the demise of Thomas Cook going to have on the local economies where it functioned?
It's quite significant in the short term. Remember, 20,000 people employed by Thomas Cook around the world, not just in Britain, so that will have an impact. And then several holiday hotspots, places like Crete, other areas in Greece, Florida, the hotels there will be paid in arrears. So in other words, once the vacationers have left, the hotels receive their money. So at the moment, we're not quite sure what will happen to those hotels, what monies will be forthcoming. So you can see that there is quite a short-term shock in several economies. It shows how tourism is so interconnected around the world.
But it comes at a time when so many people are booking their vacations and holidays online using other services, digital services, the Travelocities and the Pricelines and so forth. So from that standpoint, Thomas Cook was a bit of an anomaly or a throwback to the 20th century, right?
It's strange to say throwback to the 20th century, but exactly. I heard someone describe it to me and say, Thomas Cook made a lot of missteps in the last 10 years or so, and it doubled down on bricks and mortar. It had several mergers where it got more and more shops. And one person said to me, Thomas Cook doubled down on brochures when the rest of the world moved to barcodes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it is important to remember, Thomas Cook is a very specific example. It's an icon in Britain. The slogan, "Don't just book it, Thomas Cook it," part of my childhood. But it isn't necessarily representative of a wider problem. It is very specific.
But given that, you mentioned Crete, you mentioned a couple of other places that are feeling the impact of Thomas Cook. What do they have to do now as local economies to make up for the gap that will be present and the lack of income and revenue that will be present without Thomas Cook?
That's a great question. I know the Greek government has actually convened a cabinet meeting to discuss this because, again, it's a reminder that tourism is a very important economic driver. It's not just that frothy, fun thing we do. The Greek government has posited it might actually enact some tax cuts to stimulate its economy in the wake of this. I think there are a lot of insurances, and it does look like Thomas Cook might follow through with some of the payments, but longer term, they'll have to turn to different markets. This was very much Northern Europeans, Scandinavians, Germans, especially Brits, looking for warm weather destinations. They're going to be looking for different sources of customers. They're going to look further to China, to America, to markets that they didn't traditionally focus on to fill those rooms.
Mark Ellwood with Conde Nast Traveler. Mark, thank you so much.
Pleasure.